Staying connected, rethinking hearing and deafness. In every area of life, we know how important it is to keep our connections strong and constant. Think how frustrating it is when our internet connection is slow, or we're trying to hold a phone conversation but the signal keeps dropping out. Even something as simple as turning on the kitchen tap, only to discover the water is nothing more than a slow trickle. We want our connections to be strong and constant. Why? Because we rely on them, and we expect them to be there for us the moment we need them. Everything from the electricity in our homes, to the connections between our cities, our nations, and of course one another. Our connections enable us as individuals to live beyond ourselves and society to evolve. Just think how electricity has changed the world, or how the internet has transformed lives. Two connections that are so much a part of our lives now that we take them for granted. And yet there is one connection we very much take for granted more than any other, because for many of us we've never known what it's like to be without this connection. It's so tightly woven into the very fabric of our society that everything we do is built around the simple expectation that this connection is always available to us. And so we see it built into our day-to-day interactions with one another, into how we're alerted to danger in the environment, into the way our films and TV shows are made, into the way that business and commerce is conducted across the world, even into the way that education and healthcare is delivered. Everything in society is built around the assumption that this connection is always there, always strong and constant, and this connection is hearing. Over 99% of the world use hearing as one of their primary means of staying connected to the world around them, to one another, and to the opportunities of life. And this expectation we have that hearing is there for us and that it will be strong and constant has two very important implications for society. Firstly, we assume that hearing is universally available, which makes it very easy to forget about the individuals who do not use hearing as a means of staying connected. Individuals who are born deaf or whose hearing range is too limited. You see, when hearing is so tightly woven into the fabric of society, there's a huge risk of excluding individuals who are deaf, of excluding them from jobs, from education, from the opportunities of life. And not because a deaf person couldn't do them, but because society itself hasn't made a connection available to them. And this is not because of any prejudice or willful ignorance on the part of the majority, although it must often come across that way, but simply because if you are someone who takes your hearing for granted, it's very hard to understand what it's like to be without it, even more so than the idea of being without vision. Let's think about it. If we were all to close our eyes now, we would experience total blindness. We might even try walking around the room with our eyes closed just to compare what it's like. But we certainly wouldn't try to drive a car, and so by temporarily switching off our vision like this, we get some understanding of what it's like to be blind, which means we also realize how important our vision is to us. But with hearing, we can't switch it off. The connection is always there. It's always on duty, even when our eyes are taking a break. So it's far harder for us to appreciate what our hearing actually does for us, because we can't separate out our hearing from our moment-by-moment experience. But as a result, we also find it harder to understand what it must be like to be deaf in a society where hearing is taken for granted. And yet, as an enlightened society, we have an obligation to one another to ensure that every individual has the means to stay connected, to jobs, to education, to the opportunities of life. And if someone is unable to use hearing to do this, society must provide alternatives. It's the only way to ensure that everyone has a place in society and society is not wasting human potential. The second implication for society is we expect our communication to flow uninterrupted from one to another. We expect that when we speak, others will hear. We expect that others will hear us accurately and first time, and without us having to make an extra effort to repeat ourselves. And so when this two-way flow doesn't just happen, we find ourselves frustrated, as we do when any connection isn't working as we expect it to. We get impatient because the other person isn't sharing the effort. We get cross, even with the people we love, in an attempt to shift the effort back to them. Why? Because they've broken the connection we assume will be strong and constant. And yet it's one rule for them and another rule for us. Because if we don't hear, if we're the ones breaking that connection, what do? Do we immediately go and get our hearing checked? No, we blame it on other people not speaking clearly, or on the background noise being too loud. In fact, we blame it on anything but our hearing, because we don't want to be the one accused of breaking the connection. We don't want to be the one that others joke about. So we let our own hearing fade rather than doing what we can to keep our own connection strong and constant. Do you see the problem we have here? Society is confused about hearing and deafness. On the one hand, we have individuals whose primary means of staying connected is not through hearing. But society takes hearing so much for granted, it fails to provide these individuals with the means they need to connect. And on the other hand, we have individuals whose primary means of staying connected is through hearing, where the means to connect is available, but we take hearing so much for granted, we fail to keep our own connection strong and constant. Think how we teach our children to look after their eyes by not looking at the sun, or how we teach our children to look after their teeth by brushing after every meal. In every aspect of health, we understand that education leads to prevention, and prevention is better than cure. But when it comes to hearing, we have a different set of rules. We treat it as if it's an optional extra. It's up to you if you have your hearing checked. It's up to you if you use hearing technology. We also see our young people damaging their hearing with loud music and other social noise. And what do we say? They're teenagers. What do you expect? Or our children come home from a school disco with their ears ringing because the music is so loud. So loud, in fact, that it would be illegal if it happened in the workplace. Yet our children don't even have the same protection as adult workers. We think nothing of the physical damage that is being done to one of our children's most precious senses. Now imagine if an adult was to force a child to stare at the sun. Would we tolerate that kind of physical abuse? Of course not. But when adults inflict dangerously loud music on our young people, either because they believe it's what they want, or because it's their choice to be there, we just accept it. It's socially normal. Why? Because we treat hearing as if it's an optional extra that we can just throw away. No wonder studies are showing that hearing loss in teenagers has increased by 30% in just 10 years. In Europe, 30% more teenagers with hearing loss works out to be the equivalent of the entire population of Ireland. Hearing loss in teenagers today stands at 1 in 5. In all likelihood, this increase in hearing difficulties could have been prevented simply by teaching our children to look after their hearing like eyes and teeth, and legally protecting them as we do our workers. And in case we assume that it's only teenagers at risk here, because they are somehow more risk-seeking, it is sobering to remember that hearing loss in 7 to 8-year-olds almost tripled in just 10 years. What chance do our children have when the social norm itself expects them to damage their hearing? How bad does this need to get before we work together to change that social norm? Let's see what's happening in adults. We all know people who do not hear us as well as we expect them to. In Europe alone, there are over 80 million individuals with a reduction in their hearing range, which means that some or all of the sounds of speech are outside their hearing range. And whilst we may assume that it's only other people who are affected, almost everyone will experience a change in their hearing at one point or another in their life. The question is, will you notice it first, or will someone else? Because the current social norm is for you to be the last to know. Now, there are many things in life that it's best that we know about first, such as the piece of spinach stuck in our teeth, or if we have bad breath, or a piece of toilet paper stuck to our shoe. The good news is that for most individuals with a reduction in their hearing, today's hearing technology is superb at keeping the connection strong and constant. But because our society treats hearing as an optional extra, 75% of these individuals are not using hearing technology. That's over 60 million Europeans. It's the equivalent of the entire population of France hearing below their optimum. Now, most of these individuals are of working age, which means they are not old or retired. They contribute to Europe's economy. So what a waste of human potential. Now, even those who do choose to use hearing technology have often waited 7 to 10 years or more because our current social norm makes it so hard to recognize a reduction in hearing and to do something about it. That's 7 to 10 years when their connection to the world around them, to other people, and the opportunities of life has been fading away. It affects them, it affects those around them. Another waste of human potential. You see, hearing is one of the few ways we have of getting information from the outside world into our brains. And unlike eyesight, hearing connects us 24 hours of the day, 360 degrees around us. So when hearing fades, the brain's 24/7 connection to the outside world fades. And when that connection fades, the sharpness of our mind fades. Our ability to lay down new memories fades. Our attention and concentration fades. Our mental and physical energy fades. Our awareness and safety fades. Our interaction with others fades. Our ability to respond in the right way at the right time fades. Our ability to take hold of opportunities as and when they happen fades. Our effectiveness at work fades. Our dependability fades. Our confidence fades. Our independence fades. Our involvement in life fades. And of course, our quality of life fades. It's no surprise that mental health is generally lower in individuals with an unaddressed reduction in hearing. It's also no surprise that pay is generally lower and unemployment higher. That's what happens when the brain's 24/7 connection begins to fade. It's such a waste of human potential, and all because hearing is treated by society as an optional extra. Albert Einstein said, "All that is valuable in human society depends upon the opportunity for development accorded the individual." And so as a society, we invest large sums of money in educating people so they have the best start in life. And then we invest more sums of money in training those same people so they're effective at work and reach their full potential. And then we make sure that people have equal access to opportunities and build up their experience in life. We do this so we enable them to reach their full potential. Why? Because it's good for the economy and it's good for people's well-being. We know all this. And so we get people to the top of their potential. And then what do? We simply throw it all away. All that human potential that we as a society have developed in our people, that we have invested in, we just let it fade away. And all because our current social norm treats hearing as an optional extra. It's like parking your car at the top of the hill, then treating the handbrake as an optional extra. The handbrake is there to keep your car firmly in place, because it's better for everyone if it stays there. Because once it starts rolling down that hill, perhaps slowly at first, but then picking up speed. It's much harder to stop. And the consequences impact not only the individual, but everyone around too. So the role of hearing healthcare in Europe should not be about picking up the pieces at the bottom of the hill. It should be about keeping people at the top of their potential, just like using the handbrake at the top of a hill. It means enabling every individual with hearing to keep their connection strong and constant throughout life. So it's time for all of us to work together to create a new social norm for hearing and deafness, one that is based on the principle of staying connected. Because when we place the focus on staying connected, we begin to see what needs to change and how we achieve this. We move away from highlighting differences in one another as if they were weaknesses, and move instead towards enabling all individuals to achieve and maintain their full potential. It means making society connectable to those who cannot use hearing to connect. How? By ensuring there is always provision for other senses such as sight, or using the common ground to connect, such as the written word, which is used by deaf and hearing people alike. But perhaps there are other areas that we should be exploring together, such as how we use gestures. And what about hearing people? How do we change this outdated social norm, which allows young people to simply throw away one of their most important senses, and adults to simply fade away from life? We begin with a very simple change. A change that is so simple it will cost virtually nothing to implement. Why? Because it's simply a change to the advice we give people. For years, we've been advising people to get their hearing checked because they are not hearing well or because they've reached a certain age. In other words, we wait until after they've started rolling down that hill. Instead, we must advise people to have their hearing checked routinely throughout life and at regular intervals, just like their eyes and teeth. And we must give people direct access to the hearing care professional for these checks, without first having to go through a doctor or a consultant as if they were sick. It needs to be direct access, just like going to the opticians or dentist. Now, why are routine hearing checks throughout life so important? Well, think about when we have the brakes on our car checked. Do we get them checked because our brakes have failed us, because our brakes have let us down? Or do we have them checked routinely at regular intervals so we know our brakes are performing as they should, so they're always ready for the moment we need them most? It's the same with smoke alarms, with locking our doors at night, and with having dental checkups. In fact, in every aspect of life we know that prevention is better than cure, and that checking routinely catches problems early on and helps prevent more serious ones later. Routine checkups also create social norms because we assume that they apply to everyone. So if our children are having their hearing checked routinely, just like eyes and teeth, they become more aware of how important it is to keep their hearing strong and constant. They learn how to look after it and how to guard against things that would steal their hearing from them. Education leads to prevention, and prevention is better than cure. And if we as adults are having our hearing checked routinely, just like eyes and teeth, we begin to understand that it's all about keeping hold of what you have, about keeping your connection strong and constant, about never fading away. And when we begin to put the focus of hearing healthcare on staying connected like this, rather than as a way to highlight weaknesses and differences, then something truly wonderful begins to happen in society. Attitudes change. And hearing technology stops being seen as a symbol of getting older or of being impaired or being different, being at the bottom of the hill, a symbol that quite frankly nobody wants. Instead, it becomes the means for a hearing person to keep their hearing working at its best throughout life, of someone who is keeping their connection strong and constant, a symbol of someone who refuses to fade away.